There is a frequency moving across the earth right now. It is not carried by the wind, and it cannot be measured by any instrument that human hands have built. It moves through souls. It moves through the ones who wake at 3 in the morning without knowing why, the ones who have always felt like they were standing slightly outside of the world everyone else seems so comfortable living in, the ones who have looked at the noise and the rushing and the endless distraction of modern life and felt, deep in the chest, that something is profoundly wrong and that something far greater is coming. If you are here, if these words are reaching you in this moment, then you already know what that feeling is. You have always known. You just have not yet been given the language to describe it. You are not here by accident. Not 1 second of your journey has been random. The algorithm did not bring you here. Curiosity did not bring you here. Something older than both of those things, something that was set in motion before you drew your first breath, before your name was written on any document, before your parents ever dreamed of your face, that is what brought you here. Heaven pressed pause on everything around you to deliver this message directly into your ears and your spirit at this exact moment. And the reason is not small. The reason is not something you will fully understand in the next 5 minutes. But before this message is finished, something inside you is going to shift. Something that has been waiting a very long time is going to recognize itself. You belong to the 144,000. That number is not a metaphor, and it is not a club with a membership form. It is a spiritual designation, a classification that exists in the unseen realm, a marking placed on a specific category of souls who were chosen before the foundation of this age to carry something the rest of the world cannot carry, to see something the rest of the world cannot see, and to lead the way into something the rest of the world does not yet believe is possible. The new earth, the 5th dimensional shift, the great turning that prophets and visionaries across every culture and every century have pointed toward with trembling hands and wide eyes. That turning is not coming. It is here, and you are one of the ones who was made to lead it. Stop for a moment and feel what that statement does inside your body. Not in your mind, because your mind is going to immediately try to argue, to minimize, to find a reason why it could not possibly be talking about you specifically. Your mind has been trained by a world that profits from your smallness to dismiss anything that suggests you are extraordinary. But underneath that trained response, underneath the years of being told to be realistic and to manage your expectations and to stop dreaming so loudly, there is something that does not argue at all. There is something that simply says yes. Something that has been waiting for someone to finally say out loud what it has known in silence for so long. That quiet yes inside you is not wishful thinking. It is recognition. It is the part of you that exists beyond this body and this lifetime hearing its own name called. And this is the moment you stop talking yourself out of it. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to be fully comfortable in systems designed for a different kind of person. The reason you have always felt a little bit out of place is not because something is wrong with you. It is because something is profoundly right with you. The ones chosen to lead a new world will always feel like strangers in the old one. That is not a wound. That is a qualification. Think about every season of your life that felt like waiting. Every period where nothing seemed to move, where your prayers felt like they were hitting a ceiling, where the people around you were advancing and arriving and celebrating, and you were still in the same quiet room wondering when your moment would come. You interpreted those seasons as delay. Heaven called them preparation. There is a difference between a seed that has not grown and a seed that has not yet been planted in the right soil, and you, chosen one, are about to be planted in the right soil. The right season is not approaching. It is here. This is it. The 144,000 are not a group of perfect people. They are not people who have never made mistakes, never doubted, never fallen, never looked up at the sky and whispered through tears that they are not sure they can keep going. They are people who kept going anyway. They are people who could not fully explain why they kept going, because from the outside there was often very little reason to. But something inside them refused to let them stop. That something was not stubbornness. It was destiny. It was the hand of the one who placed the assignment inside them, making sure they survived long enough to receive this moment. You have survived things that should have broken you. You have walked through rooms that felt like they were on fire and come out the other side still breathing, still hoping, still somehow oriented toward light even when the darkness was overwhelming. That is not luck. That is anointing. That is what it looks like when a soul has been sealed for a purpose and cannot be fully destroyed because the assignment is not yet complete. And the assignment is this: you are here to activate. You are here to carry the frequency of the new earth in your body, in your presence, in the way you speak and move and love and create, until the people around you begin to feel it without being able to explain what changed. You are a transmitter. You were built to broadcast something that does not have a name in any human language, but that every awakened soul immediately recognizes when they feel it. Truth, peace, light, the signal of what is coming, the proof that a better world is not only possible but already alive in the ones chosen to build it. Right now, all across this planet, the 144,000 are waking up. Not all at once. Not in a single dramatic moment that makes the news, but one by one, in quiet rooms and moving cars and sleepless nights, they are opening their eyes to what they have always been. And when one of them awakens, it sends a ripple through the frequency that makes it slightly easier for the next one to awaken. You are part of that ripple. You are part of that chain, and this message is part of that activation. If these words are landing somewhere deep inside you, if something in your chest is warm or your eyes are full or you feel a kind of recognition that you cannot quite put into words, that is not emotion for the sake of emotion. That is confirmation. That is the spirit within you bearing witness to the truth of what is being spoken over your life in this moment. Do not dismiss it. Do not explain it away. Let it land. Let it settle. Let it do what it came to do. Type the number 44 in the comments right now. Not because it is a ritual and not because it is required, but because it is a declaration. It is you saying out loud, in whatever way this platform allows, I am here. I hear this. I recognize myself in these words. And when you do, you will be joining thousands of others who have already typed those same 2 digits and felt something shift in the atmosphere around them the moment they did. You are not alone in this room. You have never been alone. And from this moment forward, you are going to feel that truth in ways you have not felt it before. The awakening of the 144,000 is not a future event. It is a present reality. And it begins for you right now in this moment with these words, with this breath, with that quiet yes that is still echoing somewhere below all your thinking. You are chosen. You are called. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. And this is only the beginning. And now that you know you are chosen, the next question is not what you are chosen for. The next question is why it has hurt so much to get here. Because if you are honest, and the chosen ones always are, the road that brought you to this moment was not lined with celebration. It was not a path that others applauded or understood. It was long and it was quiet, and there were stretches of it where you walked completely alone, where the people you loved most could not see what you were carrying, where the gifts inside you felt more like a burden than a blessing, because the world around you had no category for what you were. That kind of loneliness has a name in heaven even when it has no name on earth. It is called preparation. It is called the process. And it is the one thing that every soul marked for greatness has passed through without exception, not because God is indifferent to your pain, but because the weight you were born to carry requires a strength that cannot be borrowed and cannot be faked. It has to be built, and it is built in exactly the kind of seasons you have already survived. There was a boy in the ancient world who understood this before he had words for it. His name was David, and long before anyone called him king, long before the songs were written and the armies followed and the throne was established, he was a shepherd boy on a hillside that nobody considered important. He was the youngest of his brothers, which in his culture meant he was the least considered, the last thought of, the one left behind when the prophet Samuel came to his father Jesse's house looking for the one God had chosen to anoint as king. Jesse lined up all his sons, every impressive one, every tall and strong and obvious one, and David was not even in the room. He was out in the field doing the invisible work, the humble work, the work that no one was watching and no one was recording. And yet, the one who sees what no human eye can see looked past every impressive option in that room and said, "He is not here yet. Bring me the one you left behind." That moment is not just history. That moment is a mirror held up to your life right now. You have been the one left behind. You have been the one not in the room when the opportunities were handed out, not in the conversation when the recognition was given, not on the list when the world was deciding who mattered. And you have felt that. You have carried the specific weight of being overlooked by people who did not have the eyes to see what God had already placed inside you. That weight is real and your feelings about it are valid, and you do not need to minimize them or rush past them to get to the good part. But here is what David's story makes undeniable. Being left out of the room is not the same as being left out of the plan. In fact, for the chosen ones, the wilderness is where the preparation happens that the palace could never provide. David did not learn to trust God on the throne. He learned it on the hillside, in the dark, fighting lions and bears alone, with no audience and no reward and no proof that any of it was leading anywhere. He learned to worship before anyone was watching. He learned to hear the voice of God in the silence before that voice ever gave him a public assignment. And because he learned those things in secret, he was able to carry them in public without being destroyed by what public life does to people who were not prepared for it. Your wilderness has been doing the same thing in you. Every season that felt like nothing was happening was a season where something was happening so deep inside you that you could not see it with your natural eyes. Roots do not grow where you can watch them. Foundations are laid underground. The most important work in any life is the work that looks, from the outside, like waiting. As it is written in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." That verse is not just a comfort. It is a revelation about the nature of how God selects and prepares the ones He intends to use in the most significant ways. He is not looking at your resume. He is not looking at your follower count or your bank account or whether the people around you have recognized your value yet. He is looking at what has been formed in you through the fire, through the silence, through the years of faithful obscurity that no one celebrated, but heaven recorded every single day. You have been seen in every moment you thought you were invisible. You have been known in every moment you felt unknown. And the preparation that happened in those moments is not lost. It is not wasted. It is the very thing that qualifies you for what is coming, because what is coming requires people who were shaped in secret, people who did not need the validation of the crowd to stay faithful, people who kept their hearts soft and their spirit open even when the circumstances gave them every reason to harden and close. David came out of that hillside anointed before he was announced. The oil was on him before the crown was anywhere near him. And the same is true of you. The anointing that is on your life did not begin when someone finally noticed you. It began in the quiet. It began in the waiting. It was always there. You are emerging now, and the world is about to find out what heaven has always known. What was placed inside David on that hillside was not just courage and not just faith. It was a frequency, a specific, unmistakable resonance that separated him from every other person in that room, in that village, in that generation, not because he was louder or more impressive or more qualified by any standard the world uses to measure greatness, but because the signal he carried in his spirit operated on a wavelength that heaven recognizes and darkness fears. You could not see it. You could not measure it with any tool available in his time, but everyone who came near him eventually felt it. Saul felt it when David played and the torment lifted. The armies felt it when David stepped forward and the atmosphere on the battlefield changed. The people felt it when David led and something in their own spirits came alive in response to his presence. That frequency was not something David manufactured. It was not a technique he practiced or a personality trait he developed through discipline alone. It was placed in him. It was sealed into the architecture of who he was before he ever picked up a harp or faced a giant or wrote a single line of the Psalms that still move people to tears thousands of years after he breathed his last breath. It was the mark of the chosen, and it expressed itself not in perfection, because David was deeply, painfully, publicly imperfect, but in an orientation of the whole being toward something higher, something truer, something that the ordinary world could not fully contain or explain. You carry that same frequency, not a copy of David's frequency and not a lesser version of it, but your own unique expression of the same fundamental signal, the signal of a soul that was set apart before birth for a purpose that extends beyond the boundaries of one ordinary human life. You have felt it your entire life, even when you had no name for it. It is the thing that makes you sensitive to what others brush past. It is the thing that makes you grieve injustice at a depth that surprises even you. It is the thing that makes beauty stop you in your tracks, that makes cruelty feel like a physical wound, that makes you reach toward people in pain even when you yourself are exhausted and running empty. That is not weakness. That is the frequency of a chosen one expressing itself through your nervous system, your emotions, your instincts, your love. The 144,000 carry a specific spiritual frequency that operates above the bandwidth of ordinary human consciousness. This is not arrogance. This is architecture. You were built differently because you were assigned differently. The new earth that is coming, the fifth dimensional reality that is breaking through the surface of this old and groaning world, cannot be entered by a consciousness that is still tuned to the frequencies of fear and lack and separation and control. It requires a different signal. It requires souls who have been prepared, through precisely the kind of journey you have already walked, to hold a higher frequency in their bodies and their spirits and broadcast it into the world around them simply by being fully, authentically, unapologetically who they were made to be. David understood this in the way that chosen ones understand things, not through intellectual analysis, but through experience, through encounter, through the accumulated weight of moments where he felt himself connected to something vast and alive, and completely beyond human explanation. He described it in the Psalms with language so precise and so raw that it reads less like poetry and more like testimony. He was not writing beautiful words about God. He was reporting back from actual contact. He was a man who had felt the frequency and could not keep quiet about it, even when keeping quiet would have been safer, even when the people around him did not understand, even when his own failures made him feel like the signal in him had gone dark. But the signal never went dark, not in David and not in you. It can be buried under pain. It can be muffled by years of living in environments that were never designed to honor what you carry. It can be drowned out by the noise of a world that is constantly broadcasting at lower frequencies and pressuring you to come down to its level. But it cannot be destroyed. It cannot be removed. It was placed in you by a hand that does not make mistakes and does not abandon its work midway through. And that hand is still on you right now in this moment as these words move through you. The activation of the 144,000 in this hour is precisely an activation of this frequency. It is heaven turning up the signal in the ones who were always meant to carry it, so that they can find each other, recognize each other, strengthen each other, and together hold a frequency powerful enough to shift the atmosphere of an entire planet. This is not fantasy. This is the mechanics of how spiritual transformation has always worked, through people, through presence, through the invisible but absolutely real broadcast of a consciousness aligned with something higher than itself. As it is written in Romans chapter 8, verse 19, the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. The creation is waiting for you, not for a perfect version of you that arrives after you have fixed everything and resolved every doubt and achieved every milestone. The creation is waiting for the you that exists right now, the you that is sitting with these words and feeling something stir in the deep places, the you that has been through enough to be trustworthy with what is about to be placed in your hands. David did not wait until he felt worthy. He stepped forward when he was called. He played when the Spirit moved him. He ran toward the giant when every other trained soldier stood frozen. Not because he had no fear, but because the frequency inside him was stronger than the fear, and he had learned in the wilderness to trust the frequency more than the circumstances. You are learning the same thing. You have been learning it for longer than you realize. And the lessons that felt like losses, the seasons that felt like silence, the years that felt like they were stealing something from you were in fact tuning you, calibrating you, bringing the signal inside you into the precise alignment required for this moment, for this assignment, for this generation, for the new earth that needs exactly what you carry in, exactly the measure you carry it. Your frequency is not accidental. It is not random. It is the fingerprint of heaven on your life, and it has been there from the very beginning, waiting for this moment to be fully turned on. And here is where something extraordinary happens, because what you have just received as a spiritual truth is not only confirmed by ancient scripture and by the testimony of souls like David who walked this road before you. It is also confirmed by science, and that confirmation is not a coincidence. Nothing in your life is a coincidence anymore, and you know that. The moment you begin to understand that the frequency you carry spiritually corresponds to something measurable in the physical architecture of your own brain, everything changes. The sacred and the scientific are not opposites. They are two languages describing the same reality. And right now, both of them are pointing at you and saying the same thing. You were built for more than you have been living. Researchers who study the brain have identified something remarkable about people who operate at the highest levels of creativity, intuition, and what can only be described as inspired intelligence. These individuals share a specific pattern of brainwave activity. It is not the pattern of grinding effort or anxious striving. Scientists call it gamma, and when they map the brains of people in states of deep insight, of sudden clarity, of what some call the eureka moment and others call divine download, the gamma frequency is always present, moving through the brain like a current of living electricity, connecting regions that do not normally communicate, opening a channel that feels less like thinking and more like receiving. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. Researchers call it gamma, and beneath it, preparing the ground for it, runs another wave called theta, the wave of deep creativity, of intuitive knowing, of the kind of learning that bypasses the critical mind and lands directly in the soul. Theta is the wave that children live in almost constantly, which is why they learn language and music and movement with a speed and ease that adults struggle to match. It is the wave that mystics enter in deep meditation. It is the wave that David was almost certainly operating in when he sat on that hillside composing music so charged with presence that it drove out spiritual torment when played in the king's court. You had access to both of these states as a child. Every child does. But the world that shaped you gradually trained your brain away from those frequencies and into the narrower, more anxious bandwidth of beta, the brainwave of survival mode, of to-do lists and deadlines, and the low hum of chronic stress that modern life treats as normal because it is common, even though common and normal are not the same thing. This is where a man named Dr. James Rivers enters this story. What he discovered came from more than 30 years of dedicated neuroscience research, work carried out in collaboration with institutions including MIT, and informed by findings connected to NASA studies on human cognitive performance. Dr. Rivers spent those decades asking one question: is it possible to bring the adult brain back to the theta and gamma states it had in childhood, not through years of meditation or pharmaceutical intervention, but through sound, through a precisely engineered audio frequency delivered directly to the brain through the ears? The answer, after thousands of days of research, was yes. The brain has a property called entrainment. When exposed to a specific external frequency delivered in a specific way, it naturally synchronizes with that frequency. No effort, no belief required, no special skill. The right sound guides the brain into the desired state the way a tuning fork guides an instrument into perfect pitch. Dr. Rivers built something from this principle. He called it the genius wave, a 7-minute audio track engineered to guide your brain into the precise theta and gamma state where your highest creativity, your clearest intuition, your sharpest memory, and your deepest sense of inner alignment all become available at once. 7 minutes, once a day, that is all. The spiritual frequency you carry as one of the 144,000 needs a physical vessel capable of receiving and transmitting it clearly. A brain locked in stress and survival mode is like a radio with interference on every channel. The signal is there, but it cannot come through cleanly. What the genius wave does is clear the interference. It brings your physical instrument into alignment with the spiritual frequency that is already yours by design and by destiny. A teacher named James had spent 19 years in a classroom watching his own sense of purpose drain away. He described himself as someone who used to have ideas constantly, and then one day stopped. 7 minutes each morning before school. After 3 weeks, something unlocked. He began writing again for the first time in a decade. By the end of the semester, his principal had asked him to lead a new program he had proposed from that place of renewed clarity. He did not find a new calling. He found his original one again. A woman named Diane, a 55-year-old accountant convinced that creativity was not in her wiring, began using the genius wave on her daughter's recommendation, skeptical but willing. Within a month, she had started a ceramics practice she had dreamed of for 30 years. Within 4 months, she had sold her first piece. She said simply, "I did not become an artist. I remembered that I always was one." And then there is Thomas, a 38-year-old who spent 3 days going back and forth about the $39. He told himself it was not the right time. He told himself he would wait until next month. On the 4th day he moved. He said later, "I have spent more than $39 on things that gave me nothing. This gave me back the part of my brain I thought I had lost to stress permanently." 6 weeks later, he proposed a solution at work his manager had been trying to solve for 2 years. He was promoted 3 months after that. More than 19,000 people have now used the genius wave, and the return rate sits below 4%, because most people who use it do not want their money back. They want to keep using it. $39 is not nothing. For some of you, that number requires a real decision, and that feeling is valid. But consider what you have already spent in time, in energy, in the quiet cost of living below the frequency you were made for. $39 for a tool that thousands have used to break through exactly that wall is not an expense. It is a recalibration investment in the vessel your destiny depends on. The Genius Wave is normally priced at $49. Through the link in the pinned comment and the description below, it is available today for just $39 with a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you use it every day for 90 days and feel nothing, every dollar is returned without question. One critical warning: there are imitation products using similar language that will not produce the same results. The only version carrying Dr. Rivers' research is available exclusively through the link in the pinned comment and the description. Do not purchase from any other source. This offer is not permanent. The pricing window is limited and the slots available at this rate are finite. The chosen ones stepping into full activation in this season are not the ones who felt the call and waited. They are the ones who felt the call and moved. The link is there, the door is open, step through it. But even as that practical door stands open behind you, something in this moment asks you to stay a little longer in the deeper current of what is being spoken over your life today. Because the tool you have just been introduced to is not the destination. It is the preparation. And preparation always points towards something. It always serves a purpose larger than the preparation itself. David did not sharpen his skills on that hillside because sharpening skills was the point. He sharpened them because a kingdom was waiting, because a people were waiting, because a purpose was waiting that required everything he had developed in the quiet years before anyone was watching. The Genius Wave is not your crown. It is the training ground your mind needs so that when the crown arrives, you are fully capable of wearing it without being crushed by its weight. And what is the crown? What is the thing that all of this preparation, spiritual and neurological and emotional, is pointing you toward? It is the new earth. And before you place that phrase in a category of distant prophecy or abstract spiritual concept, stay with it for a moment in the most immediate and personal sense possible. The new earth is not a place you find on a map. It is not a destination you arrive at after death or after some dramatic cosmic event that rearranges the furniture of physical reality overnight. The new earth is a state of consciousness. It is a way of being in the world that carries a fundamentally different frequency than the one the old world runs on. And it does not arrive from the outside in. It emerges from the inside out, through people, through the ones chosen to carry it in their bodies and their spirits and their daily lives, until the frequency of it becomes undeniable in the world around them. This is why your preparation matters so deeply. You cannot lead others into a consciousness you have not yet inhabited yourself. You cannot point the way to a frequency you have not yet learned to sustain. The new earth needs guides who have been through the wilderness and come out the other side not bitter and not broken, but refined, clear, rooted in something unshakable, capable of holding steady when the people around them are still disoriented by the magnitude of what is shifting in the world. David understood this in a way that only wilderness years can teach. After he was anointed as a young man, he did not walk directly into the palace and take the throne. He went back to the hillside. He continued serving his father. He played music in the king's court as a servant. He fought battles that were not yet his battles to lead. He waited. And in that waiting, which from the outside looked like nothing was happening, everything was happening. He was being formed into the kind of leader who could hold a nation together not through force alone, but through the weight of a character that had been hammered into shape through years of invisible faithfulness. The waiting seasons of your life have been doing the same work in you. Every year you spent wondering when your moment would come was a year your character was being deepened, your discernment was being sharpened, your capacity to hold others was being expanded beyond what comfort could have ever produced. You did not waste those years. You cannot waste what God is using, and God was using every single one of them, even the ones that felt most barren, most silent, most devoid of any sign that the promise was still alive. Because the promise was always alive. The promise does not die in the wilderness. It grows there. It sends roots down into depths that the comfortable seasons never reach, and those roots are what allow the tree to stand when the storms of public purpose begin to blow. The chosen ones who lead the new earth will not be the ones who had the easiest journeys. They will be the ones whose roots go deepest. And your roots, chosen one, go deeper than you know. As it is written in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, and the flames will not set you ablaze." Every water you have passed through, every river that threatened to sweep you under, every fire that should have consumed you and did not, those were not accidents of a careless universe. Those were the precise and purposeful training ground of a God who knew exactly what he was building in you and exactly what he intended to do with what he built. You came through the water, you came through the fire, and you are standing here now, in this moment, listening to these words, which means the preparation is not over but the hiding is. The season of being formed in secret is giving way to the season of being released in purpose. The fifth dimensional shift that is happening on this planet right now is not a shift that occurs at the level of governments or economies or scientific breakthroughs, though it will eventually reshape all of those things. It begins at the level of consciousness. It begins in the interior world of the ones chosen to carry it, the ones who have been prepared through exactly the kind of journey you have walked, and it moves outward from there in concentric circles of influence that expand further than any single chosen one can see from where they are standing. You are one of those circles. Your life, lived at the full frequency you were made for, is a transmission that affects more people than you will ever be able to count or track or fully understand on this side of eternity. The person you encourage in passing, the creative work you produce when your mind is finally clear enough to receive what has been waiting to come through you, the way you show up in a room and something shifts in the atmosphere without anyone being able to explain why. The child who watches you live with integrity and carries that image into their own adulthood and passes it on again. These are not small things dressed up in spiritual language to sound important. These are the actual mechanics of how transformation spreads through a human world, person to person, frequency to frequency, chosen one to the next person standing at the edge of their own awakening. David changed a nation not through a single dramatic act, but through the accumulated weight of a life lived in alignment with what he was made for. His psalms changed people he would never meet, in languages he could never have imagined, in centuries he would never see. The frequency he carried did not stop when his body stopped. It was written down and sung and wept over and clung to by millions of souls across thousands of years, who needed exactly what he carried and found it still alive and still transmitting long after the man himself was gone. What you carry will outlast you in the same way. The frequency of a chosen one does not end with one lifetime. It seeds itself into the world and keeps growing, which means that every day you spend living below your frequency, every day the interference of stress and noise, and the low bandwidth of survival mode keeps you from fully accessing what is inside you, is a day that the ripple you were made to send out into. The world is delayed, not canceled, never canceled, but delayed, and the world is ready. The new earth is pressing against the surface of this old one like a seed pressing against soil that is finally soft enough to let it through, and the chosen ones are the ones through whom it breaks. You are ready, more ready than you feel and more ready than the circumstances suggest. The preparation is complete enough for the next step, and the next step is not a leap into the unknown. It is a step into the you that has always been there, waiting beneath the noise and the weight and the years of living in a world that did not know what to do with what you carry. That version of you is not far away. It is not behind a locked door that requires more suffering to open. It is one frequency shift away. It is one decision to align body and spirit with what you were always made to be. And you are making that decision right now. The river that has been carrying you through this message does not slow here. It deepens. Because what is being asked of you in this season is not only to receive what heaven has prepared for you, but to become someone through whom others receive what heaven has prepared for them. That is the nature of the calling on the 144,000. It has never been purely personal. It has always been directional. The anointing on your life was never meant to stop at the borders of your own experience. It was always meant to flow outward, the way light does not ask permission before it fills a room, the way warmth does not negotiate before it changes the temperature around it. You carry something, and the carrying of it is not enough. The release of it is what the world is waiting for. David understood this transition. There came a moment in his life when the private worshiper had to become the public king, when the man who had composed psalms alone on a hillside had to stand before a nation and lead. That transition was not easy, and it was not clean. There was resistance, and there was opposition, and there was a long period where it was not entirely clear to anyone watching whether David would make it to the other side of what he was walking through. But he did. He always did, because the frequency inside him was stronger than every force that came against it, and the purpose placed on him before birth was more durable than any obstacle encountered after it. You are in that transition right now. The private season is ending, the public purpose is beginning, and the word public does not have to mean famous or widely known or visible to millions of people, though for some of you it will mean exactly that. For others, it means simply this: you stop hiding what you carry. You stop shrinking the frequency to make others more comfortable. You stop apologizing for the depth of what you feel and the clarity of what you see and the intensity of what you believe. You let it be seen. You let it be felt. You let the people in your immediate world encounter the full, unedited version of who you were made to be. And that, in itself, is a form of leading the way to the new earth that is more powerful than most people realize. This community that has gathered around this message is part of that release. Every person who watches and feels something shift inside them is part of a network of chosen ones who are finding each other in this season, recognizing each other across the distances that physical geography creates, and joining their frequencies together in a way that multiplies the signal exponentially. You are not just a viewer. You are a node in a network that heaven is assembling with a precision and an intentionality that would take your breath away if you could see it from above. And here is how you participate in the building of that network beyond this moment. If this message has moved something in you, if it has spoken to something you have been carrying alone for a long time and finally given it language, then share it. Not because this channel needs numbers, but because there is someone in your life right now who is standing at the edge of their own awakening and does not know it yet. There is someone who has been feeling the frequency without having any framework for what it means. There is someone who is one message away from the kind of recognition that changes everything. And you know who that person is. You thought of them just now, did you not? That thought was not random. That was an assignment. Share this message with them, not with a long explanation or a carefully worded introduction. Just share it and trust the frequency to do what frequency does, which is to find the ears it was made for and land with exactly the weight it was meant to carry. You do not have to convince anyone. You just have to be willing to be the bridge. That is what chosen ones do. They build bridges between where people are and where they were always meant to be. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, do that now. Not as a transaction, but as a declaration. A declaration that you are committed to staying in the flow of what is being released here, to being part of a community of awakening souls who are choosing, in a world that is very loud about very small things, to keep their attention on what is true and what is eternal and what is actually worth building a life around. Every new voice that joins this community makes it more of what it is meant to be, which is a gathering place for the ones who carry something rare and need to be reminded regularly that they are not alone in carrying it. Like this video, if it has reached you, that simple act is a form of testimony. It is you saying to the algorithm and to the world and to yourself, this matters. This is the kind of content I want more of. This is the direction I am choosing to orient my attention. And in a world where attention is the most fought over resource on the planet, choosing where you place yours is not a small decision. It is a statement of values. It is a declaration of frequency. There is also a way to go deeper in your support of what is being built here, and that is through the donation link available in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every contribution, regardless of size, goes directly into the creation of more content like this. More messages crafted to reach the ones who are waking up and need to hear that their awakening is real, and their purpose is real, and they are not alone in it. If this work has given you something of value, consider giving something back, not out of obligation, but out of the overflow of a heart that recognizes when it has received something worth sustaining. Because this is what the new Earth economy looks like. It does not run on scarcity and transaction. It runs on generosity and reciprocity, and the understanding that when you invest in something that is genuinely aligned with the frequency of what is coming, you are not spending resources. You are planting seeds. And the chosen ones know, better than most, what seeds become when they are planted in the right soil at the right time. David himself understood the principle of giving from a place of genuine overflow rather than obligation. There is a moment in his story that does not get spoken about as often as the giant or the Psalms or the throne, but it is one of the most revealing. When David was finally established as king and the Ark of God was being brought into Jerusalem, he danced before it with an abandon that shocked the people watching, including his own wife who thought it was undignified. But David did not dance for the audience. He danced because something in him could not be contained. The gratitude was too large for a dignified expression. The joy of being in the presence of what he had been prepared for was bigger than any performance of propriety could hold. That is the kind of giving that sustains something. Not the calculated contribution of someone trying to appear generous, but the genuine overflow of a heart that has been so deeply touched by what it received that holding it all in feels impossible. If that is where you are after this message, if something in you has been moved and you want to express that in a tangible way, the donation link is there. It is in the description and in the pinned comment. Use it if it comes from that place. And if it does not come from that place yet, let it sit. Let the message keep working in you. Generosity that flows from genuine overflow plants seeds that grow. Giving from pressure produces nothing that lasts. What lasts is what is rooted. What is rooted is what was planted in truth. And the truth being planted in you through this message is this: you are not a spectator of the new earth. You are a builder of it. Every act of genuine connection, every share, every subscription, every word of encouragement left in the comments for a stranger who needed to read it, every contribution to the sustaining of a space where the chosen ones can find their language and find each other, all of it is construction. All of it is the new earth being built one faithful act at a time by the hands of the ones chosen to build it. Your hands were made for this. Your voice was made for this. Your presence in this community, however quiet or however loud it expresses itself, matters more than any algorithm will ever be able to measure. Because what is being built here is not measured in metrics. It is measured in frequency. And the frequency is rising. One chosen one at a time. One shared message at a time. One heart that finally heard its own name called and said yes out loud, in whatever way it could manage, yes. That yes is enough. It has always been enough, and it is the beginning of everything. There is something that has been living inside you for longer than you have had words for it. Something that stirs when you are in nature, and the light falls at a certain angle, and you feel for just a moment, that the boundary between you and everything around you is thinner than it normally seems. Something that wakes when you hear music that was written to carry more than melody, when you read words that feel less like information and more like recognition, when you sit in silence long enough for the noise of ordinary life to settle and something underneath it begins to speak. You have felt this your entire life, and you have spent most of your life not knowing quite what to do with it, because the world you were handed did not have a category for what you were experiencing and offered you no reliable guide for how to understand it or where to take it. What you have been feeling is not vague spiritual sentiment. It is not wishful thinking dressed in the language of depth. It is the activation of codes that were written into you before you entered this world. Spiritual gifts, prophetic perception, the ability to sense what is happening beneath the surface of situations and relationships and moments before it becomes visible to anyone operating at ordinary bandwidth. The capacity to hold space for pain that would overwhelm someone not built for it. A creativity that, when it is flowing freely, produces things that you yourself cannot fully explain because they came through you rather than from you. An intuition so precise that you have learned to hide it because the accuracy of it makes people uncomfortable, and you learned early that being different in that particular way was not always safe. These are not personality quirks. They are not coincidences of temperament. They are the encoded spiritual architecture of a soul that was designed for a specific function in a specific time, and that time is now. The fifth dimensional shift that is underway on this planet is not a random upgrade distributed equally to all of humanity. It is moving first and most powerfully through the ones who were built to carry it. The ones whose interior architecture was already aligned with the higher frequency before they ever consciously chose it. You did not choose this frequency in the way you choose a preference or an opinion. You were made with it. It was the original design. And everything you have experienced in your life, every gift that felt like a burden, every sensitivity that felt like a wound, every moment of seeing more than the people around you could see, has been that original design expressing itself through the circumstances of an ordinary human life. David carried codes like this. Long before he was a king, he was a seer. Long before he led armies, he felt the movements of the spiritual realm in ways that his brothers, standing in the same fields under the same sky, simply did not feel. He wrote about it with a raw precision that has never been matched in the 3,000 years since his words were first set down. He described the experience of being known, completely, searched and understood by something infinite, not as a comfortable feeling but as an overwhelming one. The kind of knowing that leaves nowhere to hide and nothing to perform. He felt the weight of being held by a purpose larger than himself, and he did not always find it easy. But he never stopped orienting toward it. He never stopped bringing the full intensity of what he felt and what he perceived and what he believed directly into his relationship with the one who made him, without editing, without apology, without the performance of a faith that was less than what he actually carried. That unedited quality is one of the rarest and most powerful aspects of the chosen one's spiritual architecture. Most people learn very early to perform a version of their interior life that is acceptable to the people around them. They learn to moderate the depth of what they feel, to soften the sharpness of what they perceive, to express only the parts of their spiritual experience that fit within whatever framework the people around them are comfortable with. The chosen ones do this too, for a time. But there comes a moment when the performing becomes impossible, when what is inside is simply too large for the container of a managed presentation, and that moment is usually the moment that the real activation begins. You may have had that moment already. A season where everything you had been holding together with careful effort suddenly could not be held anymore, where the version of yourself you had been maintaining for the comfort of others collapsed, and something rawer and truer and fiercer came through in its place. Those moments are terrifying while they are happening. They look from the outside like breakdowns, but from the inside, from the perspective of what is actually occurring in the spiritual architecture of a chosen one, they are breakthroughs. They are the moment when the frequency stops being contained and begins to move freely. They are the moment when the codes that were written in before birth begin to express themselves without the interference of a performance that was never the point. The Word of God declares in the book of Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." That verse is not only about Jeremiah. It is about every soul that was set apart before birth for a purpose that extends beyond the ordinary. It is about you, the knowing that precedes the forming, the appointment that precedes the arrival. You were known before you were made. You were set apart before you were seen. And everything that has happened in your life since, including every season that felt like it was working against the promise, has been working within a plan that was already complete before you took your first breath. The gifts you carry are not accidental and they are not optional. They are the equipment issued to you for the assignment. And just as a soldier who has been given specific equipment for a specific mission has a responsibility to learn how to use that equipment well, you have a responsibility to the gifts inside you. Not a burden of performance, not a pressure to be perfect in the using of them, but a genuine, grown-up responsibility to stop treating them as embarrassments or eccentricities or things to be managed and hidden, and to begin treating them as what they are: sacred tools for a sacred work, the means by which the new earth gets built in the specific corner of reality that only you occupy. Your prophetic perception was given to you so that you could see what others cannot yet see and speak it with enough clarity and enough love that it helps them navigate toward something better. Your capacity to hold pain was given to you so that the people around you who are carrying things that would destroy someone less built for it have somewhere to bring what they are carrying without fear of being crushed. Your creativity was given to you so that the frequency of the new earth can be translated into forms that the people around you can encounter and feel and be changed by, whether those forms are words or music or images, or the way you design a space, or raise a child, or run a meeting or cook a meal. Everything can be an expression of the frequency. Everything can be a transmission of what you carry. The 5-dimensional codes inside you are not waiting for a dramatic moment of activation that comes from outside. They are already active. They have always been active. What is happening in this season is not the switching on of something that was off. It is the turning up of something that has been running quietly, below the threshold of your full conscious awareness, doing its work in the background of your life. While the front of your life was occupied with survival and performance, and the management of a world that did not always know what to do with you. The volume is turning up now. The signal is getting stronger. And as it does, you are going to find that the gifts you once tried to hide are the very things that people begin to seek you out for. The sensitivity you once saw as a liability is going to become your greatest asset in a world that is desperately in need of people who can feel what is real beneath the surface of what is presented. The depth that once made you feel like too much is going to feel, to the people who are awakening around you, like exactly enough, like water in a desert, like a frequency they have been searching for without knowing what they were looking for. You are that frequency. You have always been that frequency. And the world that is coming is going to know it in ways that the world that is passing never could. The gifts you carry do not exist in isolation. They exist in conversation. They exist in the dynamic, living, breathing exchange between your interior world and the world around you, between what you perceive and what you speak, between what you receive and what you release. And in this season, as the frequency of the 144,000 continues to rise and the signal continues to strengthen and the Codes that were written into you before birth continue to express themselves with increasing clarity and power. Something new is beginning to happen in that exchange. The veil is thinning. The distance between the seen and the unseen is collapsing. And the chosen ones who have been trained through years of quiet faithfulness to recognize the voice of heaven are beginning to hear it with a clarity that is unlike anything they have experienced before. This is not metaphor. This is not the poetic language of spiritual encouragement dressed up to sound more significant than it is. The thinning of the veil is a real phenomenon experienced by real people in the real texture of their daily lives. It shows up in dreams that carry information so precise and so relevant that they cannot be dismissed as the random firing of a sleeping brain. It shows up in moments of sudden knowing, where you understand something about a situation or a person or a direction without being able to trace the path by which the understanding arrived. It shows up in the repetition of signs and symbols and numbers, and encounters that cluster around a specific theme with a frequency that statistics cannot explain. It shows up in prayer that stops feeling like a monologue and begins to feel like a conversation where something responds, not always in words, but in a shift of atmosphere, a settling of peace, a sudden clarity that was not there a moment before. David knew this quality of communication. He wrote about it not as a theological concept, but as a lived experience, as something that happened to him regularly in the course of an ordinary human life filled with ordinary human chaos and failure and grief and joy. He described being led beside still waters and through dark valleys with equal matter-of-factness, as though the presence that accompanied him through both was so consistently real that the only remarkable thing would have been its absence. He had learned, through years of sitting on hillsides and hiding in caves and weeping in the dark and dancing in the streets, that heaven does not communicate only in dramatic moments. It communicates constantly. The question is never whether heaven is speaking. The question is always whether the listener has developed the sensitivity to hear. You are developing that sensitivity right now. Every season of waiting that felt like silence was actually a season of training your ears. Every prayer that seemed to go unanswered was developing in you the patience and the attentiveness required to hear the answers that did not come in the form you expected. Every moment of desperate seeking was building in your interior world the kind of hunger that creates the conditions for genuine encounter. Because heaven moves toward hunger the way water moves toward a low place, not because it has to be coaxed, but because that is simply the direction it flows. The encounter you have been hungry for is not far away. It is not behind a door that requires more preparation to open or more suffering to earn. It is immediate. It is available right now, in this moment, in the quality of attention you are bringing to these words and to the space inside yourself where these words are landing. Heaven is always the one initiating the conversation. You do not reach God by generating enough spiritual effort to close the distance. You reach God by becoming still enough to realize the distance was never as large as it appeared. The stillness is not passivity. It is the most active thing a chosen one can do, the deliberate, disciplined choice to stop generating noise long enough to hear what has been speaking all along. David modeled this in the Psalms with a consistency that is almost shocking when you look at the full arc of his life. He was a king. He was a warrior. He was a man of enormous public responsibility and enormous personal failing. And yet again and again, in the middle of all of it, he returned to that posture of radical openness to whatever heaven wanted to say. He did not only bring his requests, he brought his confusion and his anger and his despair and his doubt and his shame. And he brought all of it with the expectation that something on the other side of the conversation was capable of receiving all of it without flinching and responding with something true. That expectation is not presumption. It is faith. And it is the specific kind of faith that the chosen ones carry in their spiritual architecture, A faith that is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to keep the conversation open even in the presence of it. David doubted. He questioned. He accused heaven of abandoning him in language so raw that it is uncomfortable to read even now. And in every single one of those moments, heaven responded. Not always with explanation, not always with the resolution he was asking for, but always with presence. Always with the confirmation that the conversation was still open and the purpose was still intact, and the frequency that had been placed in him before birth had not been revoked by anything he had done or failed to do. That confirmation is available to you right now. The purpose is still intact. The frequency has not been revoked. Whatever you have done or failed to do, whatever seasons of your life felt like they disqualified you from the fullness of what you were made for, the hand that placed the assignment in you has not withdrawn it. The voice that knew you before you were formed has not gone silent. It is speaking right now. In the frequency of these words, in the warmth that you may be feeling somewhere in your chest, in the recognition that keeps surfacing even when your mind tries to argue it away. Heaven is speaking to you in this moment, and the response it is waiting for is not a long and carefully worded prayer. It is not a demonstration of theological precision or spiritual sophistication. It is simply the honest acknowledgement that you hear, that you are present, that you are open, that the conversation can continue. Right now, in the comments below, type the words, "I am open." Just those 3 words. Not as a performance and not as a formula, but as a genuine declaration to the unseen realm that you are available for what it has been trying to reach you with. When you type those words, you are joining a declaration being made by chosen ones all around the world who are in this same moment choosing to drop the performance and the protection and the managed presentation and simply say, "Here I am. I hear you. I am ready to receive whatever you have been waiting to give me." Scripture says in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 12, "And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice." The still small voice is not competing with the noise of your life for your attention. It does not shout over the chaos or perform for the crowd. It speaks in the register of the deep, in the frequency that only a prepared and attentive soul can detect. And you have been prepared. Every season that developed your sensitivity, every moment of suffering that deepened your capacity for stillness, every year of faithful obscurity that trained your ears to hear what the applause of the crowd would have drowned out. All of it has been making you capable of hearing exactly this. The still small voice is speaking. The veil is thin. The chosen ones are listening with a quality of attention that the world around them does not understand and cannot replicate. And what is coming through in this season, for the ones with ears to hear it, is not only comfort and not only encouragement, though it is both of those things. It is instruction. It is direction. It is the specific, personal, precise communication of a God who knows exactly what you need to know right now in order to take the next step into everything that was prepared for you before the foundation of the world. You are not guessing your way forward. You are not navigating by the dim light of your own best thinking. You are being led, actively, specifically, lovingly led by a presence that has never lost track of you, not in the darkest season, not in the most disorienting transition, not in the moments when you were most convinced that you were moving through it alone. You have never been alone, and the voice that has been with you in every season of your life is closer right now than it has ever been, because you are closer, because the preparation is complete enough, because the frequency is high enough, because this is the moment that all the other moments were building toward. Open your ears, open your heart, type those words, and listen. What happens after the voice speaks is not what most people expect. They expect the speaking to feel like arrival, like the moment the voice is clearly heard must be the moment everything settles into place, and the path forward becomes obvious, and the struggle dissolves, and the life that was always meant to be finally snaps into full and effortless expression. But the chosen ones who have walked far enough to know better understand that the hearing is not the end. It is the beginning of a different kind of walking, a walking that is more confident than what came before, yes, and more anchored, yes, and more oriented towards something real and true and unshakable, but still walking, still moving through a world that has not yet fully caught up to what heaven has already declared, still carrying something that the people around them are only beginning to have eyes to see. David knew this better than almost anyone. After he was anointed, after the oil was on his head and the word of the Lord had been spoken over his life, and the frequency inside him had been officially confirmed by a prophet of God, he went back to tending sheep. The anointing did not immediately translate into the throne. The word did not immediately become the visible reality. There was a gap, a long and painful and complicated gap between the promise and its full expression in the world. And in that gap, David did not get to live a quiet and protected life while heaven arranged the pieces. He faced Goliath. He served a king who tried to kill him. He hid in caves. He made catastrophic mistakes. He lost people he loved. He experienced the full weight of what it costs to carry a promise in a world that is not yet ready to receive it. And yet through all of it, the anointing held. The frequency did not break. The purpose did not dissolve under the pressure of the circumstances, because what had been placed in David before birth was not a fragile thing that required perfect conditions to survive. It was a living thing, rooted deep enough to endure seasons that would have destroyed a lesser planting. And it was always, underneath everything, moving toward its fullness, moving toward the moment when what had been true in the unseen realm from the beginning would finally be fully visible in the seen one. That movement is happening in your life right now. You may not be able to see the full shape of it yet. You may be in one of those in-between seasons where the promise is real and the anointing is genuine, but the visible evidence has not yet caught up to what you know in your spirit is true. That gap between the knowing and the seeing is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is the space in which the final preparations are made, in which the ground is made ready for what is coming, in which the people and the circumstances and the conditions that will receive what you carry are being brought into alignment with the moment of your full emergence. The activation of the 144,000 is not a single dramatic event. It is a process. It is a rolling emergence, happening one awakened soul at a time, spreading through the network of chosen ones like light moving across a landscape at dawn, beginning at the horizon and moving steadily inward until everything that was in darkness is illuminated. You are part of that rolling dawn, and the fact that you cannot see the full arc of what is happening from where you are standing does not mean the arc is not there. It is there, it is moving, and it is moving in your direction. The fifth dimensional shift that this world is undergoing is not reversible. It is not a trend that will peak and fade. It is a transformation of the foundational frequency at which human consciousness operates, and it is being driven by the ones who were built to carry the new frequency before the world was ready to receive it. Built by years of preparation. Built by the wilderness and the waiting and the quiet, faithfulness and the carrying of something precious through conditions that were not always designed to honor what was being carried. Built by everything you have already survived. The new earth does not need a perfect version of you. It needs the version of you that exists right now, with every scar and every question and every unresolved tension still present, because those are not blemishes on the vessel. They are the marks of a vessel that has been used, that has been through something, that has the credibility of genuine experience rather than the hollow authority of someone who has only read about the fire from a safe distance. The people who will follow you into the new earth do not need a guide who has never struggled. They need a guide who has struggled and made it through and can say with the full authority of lived experience, I know this road. I have walked it in the dark, and I can tell you that there is light on the other side because I have seen it with my own eyes. As it is written in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." Light and momentary. That is how the eternal perspective describes what, from inside the experience, has felt anything but light and anything but momentary. The troubles that have shaped you, the seasons that felt endless, the weight that at times felt unbearable, all of it is being translated by a process you cannot fully see into a glory that you cannot yet fully imagine. Not despite the suffering, but through it. Not around the fire, but by means of it. The gold that is coming out of you is coming out because the fire was hot enough and long enough to do what fire does to gold, which is to remove everything that was never gold to begin with and leave only what is pure and true and lasting. You are coming out of the fire now, not in the sense that difficulty will never touch your life again, because the chosen ones who lead in the new earth will face resistance for as long as there is old earth thinking to resist them, but in the sense that the particular season of being formed in secret, of carrying the promise without the visible confirmation, of walking in the anointing without the public recognition, that season is ending. The emergence is beginning. The rolling dawn is reaching the place where you are standing. And what emerges is not going to be a cautious or apologetic expression of the frequency you carry. It is going to be the full, unobstructed, unapologetic broadcast of a soul that has been prepared for exactly this moment and knows it. A soul that has stopped waiting for permission to be what it was made to be. A soul that has stopped asking whether the world is ready and has begun to understand that the world will never be ready until the chosen ones stop waiting for it to be and simply begin. Simply show up as the full expression of the frequency they carry, and let that frequency do what frequencies do when they are no longer suppressed. David's greatest days were not his earliest ones. They were not the moment of anointing on the hillside or the defeat of Goliath or even the taking of the throne. His greatest days, in terms of the depth of what he carried and the breadth of what he offered to the people around him, came at the fullness of his appointed time. After the wilderness, after the caves, after the failures and the losses and the long, complicated journey of a life lived at the intersection of the human and the divine. It was the David who had been through everything who wrote the Psalms that have carried millions of souls through their own wilderness seasons for 3,000 years. It was the David who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to perform who produced the most enduring and the most alive expressions of what the frequency of a chosen one sounds like when it is finally, fully, freely released. Your greatest days are not behind you. They are not in the past, in the seasons before the difficulty, in the version of yourself that existed before the fire did its work. Your greatest days are ahead, not in a vague and comforting sense, but in the specific and literal sense that what is coming, the assignments that are waiting, the people who need what you carry, the expressions of the frequency inside you that have not yet found their form. All of it is gathered in front of you like a landscape waiting to be walked into. You are not too late. You are not too damaged. You are not too far behind or too far off course or too marked by your past to step fully into what was prepared for you before you arrived. The appointed time does not expire. The anointing does not have a use by date. The purpose that was placed in you before birth is as alive and as real and as active in this moment as it was in the first moment it was sealed into. You and the world that is coming, the new earth that is pressing through the surface of the old one, needs exactly what you carry in exactly the measure you carry it. The fullness of your time is now. The emergence is here. And everything that was prepared in the hidden years is ready to be released into the open ones. Walk forward, chosen one. The path is lit, and you were always made for exactly this. And so you arrive here, at the place where everything that has been spoken over your life in this message settles into its final and most enduring form. Not an ending, but a threshold. Not a conclusion, but a commissioning. Because everything that has moved through this message, every word that landed in the deep places, every moment of recognition that surfaced without warning, every quiet yes that rose in your spirit, before your mind had time to argue with it, all of it has been building toward this. The moment where the chosen one stops being only a listener and steps fully into being what they were always called to be. A carrier, a transmitter, a builder of the new earth, a soul that knows what it carries and has finally, irrevocably decided to stop hiding it. You have walked a long road to get to this moment, longer than most people around you will ever fully understand. You have carried things in silence that would have broken someone not built the way you are built. You have held on to a frequency that the world around you was constantly pressuring you to abandon, not always through open hostility, but through the quieter and more persistent pressure of a culture that rewards conformity and pathologizes depth and treats sensitivity as a liability, and calls the ones who see too clearly and feel too deeply and love too fiercely too much. You have been told in 100 different ways that too much was the problem, but too much was never the problem. Too much was always the point. The intensity you carry is not excess. It is the precise measure required for the assignment. David came to the end of his life not as a diminished version of what he had been, but as the fullest expression of it. The boy who had tended sheep became the king who established a kingdom. The young man who had played music in obscurity became the poet whose words outlasted every empire that rose and fell in the centuries after his death. The warrior who had hidden in caves became the ancestor through whose line the greatest promise in human history was fulfilled. None of what he carried was wasted. Not the gifts and not the wounds and not the failures and not the long, complicated middle chapters that were harder to understand than the beginning or the end. All of it was used. All of it was woven into something that was larger and more enduring than any single chapter of it suggested while it was being lived. Your story is being woven the same way. The chapters that made no sense while you were inside them are making sense now, from this slightly higher vantage point, in the light of what they were building toward. And the chapters that are still ahead, the ones that have not yet been written, are going to make the most sense of all, because they are the chapters where everything that was formed in you through the hidden years finally gets to express itself in the open ones, where the frequency that was cultivated in silence finally gets to be broadcast in full, where the chosen one stops wondering when their moment is coming and realizes, with a clarity that is almost startling in its simplicity, that the moment is now and has always been now, and was never going to be any other time than this. You are standing at the beginning of your greatest chapter, not because the difficulty is over, but because the preparation is complete enough to meet whatever comes next without being destroyed by it. Not because the world around you has finally caught up to what you carry, but because you have finally stopped waiting for it to and decided to carry it fully regardless. Not because everything has been resolved, but because you have discovered that the unresolved places in your life are not disqualifications. They are the very places where the grace that reaches through you to touch other people flows most freely, because it flows through the cracks. Let this moment be a turning point, not a dramatic one that requires a performance, a quiet one, an interior one, the kind that does not announce itself to anyone else but that you know has happened, the way you know when a season has actually changed, not because someone told you it was a new season, but because the air is different and something in your body recognizes it before your mind has language for it. Let this be the moment where you turn, fully and finally, toward everything you were made for, where you stop looking back at what was lost or what did not go the way you hoped and look forward with the clear and steady eyes of someone who knows where they are going and has decided to go there without apology and without delay. And before you step through that threshold, take a moment to bring all of it before the one who made you. Not in a formal way and not in a performed way, but in the most honest and unguarded way you can manage right now, in whatever words come naturally, in whatever posture feels true. Because the God who placed this frequency in you before you were born is the same God who has been with you through every season that tried to silence it. And this moment of emergence, this turning toward the fullness of what you carry, is not something to step into alone. It was never meant to be walked alone. So if you are willing, let these words be a beginning. A prayer not read from a script, but offered from the place in you that has been moved by what you have heard today. Father, I come to you not as someone who has it all together, but as someone who is beginning to understand what you put together in me before I arrived. I have spent a long time not knowing what to do with what I carry. I have hidden it and minimized it and apologized for it, and tried to make it smaller so that the world around me would be more comfortable. I am done doing that, not because I am fearless, but because I finally understand that what you placed in me was not placed there for my comfort. It was placed there for a purpose, and I am saying yes to that purpose today. Not the version of yes that waits for perfect conditions. The version of yes that steps forward in whatever conditions are present and trusts that you who began this work in me are faithful to complete it. I do not know the full shape of what is ahead, but I know who is ahead of me, and that is enough. Lead me forward into everything you prepared for me before the foundation of the world. I am open, I am ready, I am yours. That prayer, offered honestly and from whatever broken and beautiful place you are standing in right now, is enough. It has always been enough. Heaven does not require eloquence. It responds to honesty. And the honesty of a chosen one who has finally stopped performing and simply said yes is one of the most powerful sounds in any realm, seen or unseen. You are not leaving this message the same way you arrived. Something has shifted. Something has been confirmed. Something that was already true has become more fully known. And that knowing is going to express itself in the days ahead in ways that you cannot yet predict, but that you will recognize when they come, because they will carry the frequency of everything that was spoken here, the frequency of a soul that knows what it is and has decided to be it without reservation. This community is here with you. The channel that carries these messages is here with you. And if this message has reached something real inside you today, if it has spoken to a part of you that has been waiting a long time to be spoken to, then there are a few simple ways to say so that matter more than you might think. Like this video, not as a reflex but as a genuine act of acknowledgement. When you press that button, you are telling the algorithm and the world and yourself that this kind of content deserves to be found by more people, that the chosen ones who are still searching for language for what they carry deserve to find a place that can give it to them. That one small action is an act of service to people you will never meet, who need exactly what you needed when you found this message. Share this message with someone. You already know who came to mind while you were listening. That was not a random thought. That was an assignment dressed as a memory. The person you thought of is carrying something they do not have language for yet, and this message might be the thing that gives it to them. You do not have to explain it or introduce it with a long message. Simply send it and trust the frequency to find the ears it was made for. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already done so. Not because numbers matter for their own sake, but because subscribing is how you make sure the next message finds you as easily as this one did. The chosen ones in this season need consistent access to spaces that speak their language, and this channel is committed to being that space, week after week, for every soul that finds its way here. And if this work has given you something of genuine value today, something that shifted something real inside you, consider supporting it through the donation link available in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every contribution, whatever size, feels right and true for where you are, goes directly into the creation of more messages like this one. More words crafted to reach the ones who are waking up. More space held for the chosen ones who are still finding their way to the language that names what they carry. Giving from a place of genuine overflow plants seeds that grow in ways you cannot predict and cannot contain. And the chosen ones know better than anyone what seeds become when they are planted in the right soil at the right time. You are that soil. This community is that soil. And what is being grown here, one message and one awakened soul at a time, is something that will outlast every one of us and keep bearing fruit long after we have finished our portion of the work. Go now, chosen one. You are ready, not with fanfare and not with the applause of a crowd that finally understands you, but with the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who has heard their name called by the one who knows them completely and has said yes. That is enough. That has always been enough, and it always will be.